Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Zanzal, coach, ordained minister, grandma, mama of four, and a queer woman married to my lovely, gorgeous wife after I came out later in life. This is Coming Out and Beyond LGBTQIA Plus Stories, a podcast for everyone exploring identity, queerness, and what it means to live more truthfully, no matter our age or stage. We share stories of coming out, starting over, resiliency, how to navigate relationships, grief, joy, and building lives that actually fit us as human beings. No labels required, just curiosity, courage, and a little faith in this journey. Welcome. Let's dive in.
You love each other, but lately it feels like you're speaking different emotional languages. Strengthening Love is a powerful relationship course created just for lesbian couples. You'll learn how to break painful patterns, communicate with compassion, and feel truly seen again together. Created by LGBTQ+ experts, it's affirming, practical, and designed for real-life connection. It's a one-time payment, lifetime access, and real change. Visit healthylesbianrelationships.com to enroll today, because your love deserves more than just getting by. It deserves to grow.
Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Out and Beyond LGBTQIA Stories. I have a photographer here today. Morgan Lieberman is a gay Jewish documentary photographer based in Los Angeles, California. She most prominently documents narratives of identity, disability, older generations, and subculture. Her work has been published in Time, National Geographic, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and several other national outlets. She is currently working on her first book honoring the lives of senior lesbian partnerships across the USA. Morgan, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
I'm really honored. I think everyone should know that we were, introduced to each other because of my NPR feature that came out in June, no pun intended. But that was a very big feature because that was on the 10-year anniversary of same-sex marriage being federally legalized and recognized. So that was a big milestone. And yeah, that's how we connected.
Yeah, that is. And I also looked at some of your work that you were doing because it was in the NPR piece. And I was like, okay, this is intriguing. But before we get into your work, which I've worked with the older people for a really long time before I was one. So I really understand, like why it's so important to get people's stories and stuff like that. But I want to first go into your story. So can you tell me, okay, Morgan, tell me your story.
Wow, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. And then to have a microphone, a little bit of a daunting task. How am I going to wrap this up in a nice little bow? Let's just say I didn't really have an awareness that I was gay, at least on a very conscious level, till I got to college. But I probably knew since third grade. I probably had some sort of idea, but it was repressed. I had a crush on a third grade teacher, and that was very evident to me. But when I got to college, Orange is the New Black was the first Netflix series. I was a freshman and I was watching it, and I just sort of felt this like internal shift of like, what am I feeling right now? And that to me, that was a light bulb moment of like, yeah, I think I know what's been happening, and this is a very validating experience to have. And as somebody that, has a journalism background and is a huge believer in the power of media representation, I think it's really interesting to notice that Orange is the New Black was like that epiphany for me. But yeah, my coming out story, I'd say my junior year of college, I was in a relationship with my sorority sister, who was my best friend. And we were both like the rival California girls going to school at the University of Missouri. And we were in the closet for most of college because we did not feel secure enough to come out. And, it was a different time, 9 years ago.
It was a little bit of a different time, but also going from California. Did you grow up in California? All right. Well, you moved to California to Missouri. My gosh, Morgan. I mean, was that a culture shock for you?
I always say I think people would have more of a culture shock coming here from Missouri because there's all walks of life and maybe they're not used to that. But it wasn't a culture shock. I'd say the biggest shock I had was Westboro Baptist Church came to Mizzou also my freshman year to protest the coming out of Michael Sam, who was the first collegiate football player to come out. And I think that was another pivotal experience. I am a very spiritual person. I think honestly the universe was like trying to show me where my activism was at that time. And I just remember protesting Westboro Baptist, and I felt so strongly about protecting Michael and our school and what we stand for, because it is a very liberal town, Columbia, Missouri.
Most university towns are.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, that should have also been a sign like, hey, you should pay attention to what you're feeling right now. But I ended up coming out over a Facebook post because not to say that I was being lazy, but I was like, I have family all over the country. I have friends all over the country. I really don't want to have to sit down with each individual person and I'm a millennial. We love social media. So, yeah, my girlfriend at the time, we, picked out a picture and we just kind of blasted it out. We were our own publicists and posted it on Facebook. Let's just say the reception was nothing but positive. So we were looking at each other like, why didn't we come out sooner? And it was very easy. As I've learned, throughout my 20s, now I'm 30, but, starting a documentary project honoring the lives of older lesbian partnerships, I learned very quickly that I had it so easy. And that is partially why I am so passionate about getting this project out to the world to help younger generations of not only queer kids, but just kids as a whole understand that these women paved the way for future generations in countless ways.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what is the name of your book?
So it's a working title. It's called Hidden Once, Hidden Twice. I wrote a poem about just what I was feeling about embarking on the project and thinking about how older lesbians were hidden at first for, or having to hide in some way for being gay, being queer. And then secondly, the double whammy of that is, being hidden by society because of aging and being
Yeah.
older and that lack of visibility that, all older people feel, I think, to a certain degree. But obviously, I'm not a professional, I'm not a psychologist, but, I've done enough research at this point to know that. If you're not partnered and you're in assisted living, there's a very high probability that there's, a lot of older queer folks that are going to go back in the closet to protect their health care to not be discriminated against. So, that's not really what my project is about. It's really about these women that have overcome everything and are still partnered, still very much in love, and they know that they're the lucky ones. And so there's a very joyful aspect of this as well. And I think that's really important to focus on the joy.
You said a lot there because I used to work in healthcare and I was a hospice chaplain for years. I worked in hospitals and nursing homes. And I agree with you. A lot of people do have to go back into the closet because sometimes the assisted living, all the elder care places are not safe for queer people because of the nurses and the aides and people that work there that feel they have the right to discriminate against somebody because they're queer. And the worst is when you have somebody who is born again or who's proselytizing, which should never be done, who try to proselytize people that, oh my God, they've probably been proselytized to so many times. And it's
Yeah.
very disrespectful.
Yeah. And yeah, if they're not dealing with the discrimination in assisted living, maybe they're dealing with it from their family members that
Yeah,
are
that's a huge
caretaking.
problem.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing too, is that if they're not out to their families, and some of these real older ones are not, they're in their 90s, 80s, 70s, and they have been closeted for a really long time. And sometimes the families know, but they don't say anything. But the problem is a lot of times is they'll have like my niece will take care of me and your niece will take care of you or nephew because these women generally did not have children and they get separated. They get put in separate facilities. They don't see each other at end of life.
Whoa, that's heartbreaking.
It
Yeah,
is heartbreaking. So it's really important if you're listening to this and you're older to make sure you have all your legal paperwork done so that people can't do that to you. Even the facilities can't.
yeah, yeah.
Super curious. What have you learned? Okay, how old are the women you're taking pictures for?
Yeah. So, it started out, saying like 62 to 63 years of age and up. And I've kind of stayed in that umbrella. And I've photographed and interviewed 50 partnerships in 10 states so far. So the range is from, 63 and up all the way up to 96 years old.
Wow, were they a couple that were still alive and they were together?
So the couple, Lillian Faderman and her partner Phyllis. Phyllis is 96, Lillian's in her 80s. And if anyone's watching and has read the Gay Revolution, Lillian is one of the most world-renowned historians on queer history. I was so nervous to meet with them because, it's Lillian's iconic. All of these women are iconic in their own ways, but she can be very much a household name, I would say, terms of
Mhm.
queer history. But I started out just, wanting to kind of like cast a wide net, and I'm still doing that. I think visually my style is changing as, I'm getting my master's and wanting to kind of dig a little deeper conceptually. I'm still figuring out the kinks of that. But overall, it all starts with like a Facebook group or lesbian connection, placing an ad on lesbian connection, kind of going to like this underground publication that, I didn't even know about till probably like the fourth or fifth couple that I met with in Santa Fe. And they're like, "Have you heard of Lesbian Connection?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "How?" And they pull out this huge stack and they're like, "Please take this stack, our gift to you." And it was just like the Bible because once a year, Lesbian Connection sends out a directory of lesbians globally. So I was able to connect with a lot of partnerships.
What a treasure trove for you.
Yeah. So it's like separated, by state, country. I've connected with a lot of couples through there. It's a lot of word of mouth, which is great. So, the lesbian pipeline is very strong. And sometimes it's like coincidental. Like I meet with a couple in Wyoming and they happen to know of the couple that I met with in Denver. So it's a very small world. But yeah,
Lesbian world is pretty small.
it's very small. Yes.
And we
Yeah.
tend to know each other too. Like even if we don't know each other, we know each other's work.
Yeah. It's really beautiful.
Okay. Are they all long-term couples, been married together for years, or they sometimes meet in midlife or something like that?
It's a mix. I'd
Yeah.
say most are long term, like Nanette and Dee, who live in San Francisco. They just celebrated their 50th a couple weeks ago. They're super thrilled about it. They're in the NPR feature as well. But then, Judy and Jan have been together, I want to say less than 3 years, because Judy lost her partner. She was widowed. And they met because Judy was living in Fort Collins 40 years. She's like, "I need to get out of here. I need to have a change of scenery." And I guess Fort Collins has become very conservative. So she wanted a change, culturally. So she moved to Boulder and she started a pickleball meetup group for older lesbians, not even knowing how to play pickleball. And that's when Jan walked in and they fell in love. And
That's
they
so
they are
lovely.
so happy. And yeah, I met them last year when I was in Colorado. And that was a really, really empowering experience because we had taken portraits out on a trail looking, out over the mountain range. And it was just so gorgeous. And, they were very affectionate in public. And there was a runner that ran past him and was like, "Oh my God, you guys look amazing." And later on, Judy told me, me kissing Jan in public, like that would have never happened in my past. And it was just this very liberating experience of saying, like, she finally felt like she was out to the world because of how affectionate she is with Jan. And even laying next to her, going mattress shopping, just laying on the bed next to her in public. That was a very liberating experience. So I think that these portrait sessions and the interviews are very therapeutic in their own way. And I keep the conversations really open-ended, but the photography is really important to me too. But I find that the photography is usually 20% of the time that I spend with the couples, and 80% is getting to know each other, which is invaluable.
What can lesbian relationships teach us? What are you learning from these women who really, my goodness, have walked a hard road and maintained who they are? Because I just actually interviewed somebody it just came out this week. And Maxine's 68. She owns the Toys of Eros in Provincetown, which is a very famous sex shop. And so I had Maxine on the show, and she's, as I said, 68. And she said, I looked in the mirror one day and decided I could live my life one way, or I could live my life as a lesbian and be an activist and do all kinds of incredible things. And I decided to live as a lesbian. And when I say this, I'm not saying that being a lesbian is a choice. How you live your life is the choice, because being queer, being gay, and fluidity, that's been set by the time you were born. The choice is how am I going to live my life?
Yeah, it's so wild. I will generalize. I would say 98% of the women that I have met with never felt shame for who they are. And I was just sitting there thinking, like, okay, so shame is taught, shame is internalized. And I think I felt a lot of internalized homophobia based on some of the things that I heard growing up. I think a lot of that was so internalized, and I've become so much more confident in myself as a person because of their confidence and just being so unforgiving and unapologetic about who they are as people. And I would say the most important thing I've learned from them is to live life on your terms, even if it doesn't make sense to other people. And yeah, and that's like I think a universal lesson that we could all learn from older lesbians.
The shame thing caught me off surprise, because I'm like, but I'm also wondering is it wasn't about shame. They lived a closeted life. It was about safety. They were worried about their physical safety.
And I think it's important to also distinguish, even in the title, hidden once, hidden twice. Like, these women may have been hidden to the majority, okay, to a heteronormative environment, but they were very much thriving in the lesbian community.
Yes.
So, and that's what I really have learned so much about is what were those spaces like? Not just going to a gay bar or a lesbian bar. It was really, we had women's bookstores. And yeah, we had softball leagues and we had activist groups and we marched together and we did so many things together and we lived together. We had big houses full of lesbians and basically communes, And to me, that was just, it like blew my mind just thinking about these very women focused, lesbian focused communities that I had never heard stories about.
Yeah, and my wife came out in 1982, so she's been out a long time. I came out in 2016, but she came out and the way her friends and her, so we're all in our 60s. Well, and the women that I'm friendly with that are that age really talk about wistfully about the time when it was an underground culture. So there was a community felt a lot stronger and a lot more connected than it does now. And I would love to hear your perspective, because I'm their age, so I just believe them. But I would love to hear your perspective as somebody who came out and it was like, okay, whatever, Morgan, what do you think about that?
Hi, it's Anna MP.
And I'm Anne-Marie Zanzal. We are part of the production team of Secure Lesbian Bonds.
You love each other, but lately it feels like you're speaking different emotional languages. Conversations turn into arguments or silence. You feel alone even when you're right next to her.
But you're not broken. You're just stuck in a painful cycle, and there's a way out. Strengthening Love is an online relationship course created specifically for lesbian couples. It blends emotion-focused therapy, trauma-informed tools, and real-world support to help you reconnect without blame or shame.
Inside, you'll learn how to recognize your emotional triggers, communicate with compassion, and rebuild intimacy that lasts. It's flexible, self-paced, and completely affirming of your relationship.
And for less than 2 therapy sessions, you get lifetime access to a full relationship roadmap with worksheets, partner exercises, and guidance from queer women who get it. Start today at healthylesbianrelationships.com.
Because your love deserves to feel safe, seen, and strong again.
Like, what do you think about, like, is there a longing for you to have those spaces again? Because there is for me.
Yes, that's why I started this project. I think when COVID hit, any sort of isolation you were feeling in your life was just compounded. And one of the motivations for me working on this was I want to be connected to more lesbians and I want to be connected to just the LGBTQ community as a whole. This is like my way in. Was feeling very isolated as a queer person, even in LA, where it is this queer hub. It's a mecca. But yeah, it was COVID that
I would love to hear your thoughts, because a lot of times my younger friends that are in their 20s and 30s, an out lesbian or an out person, because there's a lot of things that happen, like because people are in their 20s, cheating, backstabbing, being cruel to people in a group setting. But my argument is that happens in straight world too. That's just because people are in their 20s. Has it been hard for you to find like community of other people that you want to hang out with, do things with? Has that been hard, like, as you have navigated your 20s? Has that been hard for you? And do you think that has to do with we're no longer an underground subculture?
I think there has been
You might be one within a year, but right now we're not.
I think in a lot of ways right now and in past years as a queer person in the modern day, like life is what you make of it. So I can't fully say it's been difficult for external reasons. I think I could make more of an effort. But, I was on a mainly queer women's soccer team called Dyke Soccer, but it's very trans inclusive, which is great. And I've really enjoyed playing with them. So I'm starting to see, at least in the last 5 years, a lot of pop-up events that are happening that aren't just focused on drinking, which I think is definitely something that has been touched on historically, how the lesbian bar could create a lot of toxicity for relationships and for dating.
Especially if people were drinking. I mean, you're not your best self when you're
Yeah, and if that's like the one gathering place, then yeah, that's not the healthiest, but that was the option. And then it was also like, the underground publications, and that's how you were able to communicate with other lesbians nationally. I think that it's maybe just not as big of a deal. So, and also with social media, I think people are definitely like culturally isolated and maybe don't fully realize how much togetherness and community that lesbians had 70s, 80s, 90s. But I think that those people are out there that want to connect. Maybe there's just actually so many options now that it's kind of spread out and dispersed. But there's like queer hiking groups and the risograph like printing community, I'm really inspired by, and that's, a ton of queer folk there. So I would say like artists and like queer people are very much intersectional communities, and that's what I'm tapping into right now as, an artist.
Well, and there's always been like this sort of separation between lesbians and gay men. Do you find that as somebody who's like in the younger community? Do you find that's still true? Or that's changed?
I think somewhat. I think there can be a separation, but I'm like just a lover of all people and I have friends of all kinds, and I love being around gay men as well, so it's just whoever I connect with on a deeper level. But what I find is that, the older lesbian women that I'm meeting with like become my friends. And if I'm having a hard day, it's almost like I can think about these women and kind of feel that the love like that they've given me. And it
Mhm.
really like carries me through. And I've never actually said that out loud, but that's really what it feels like. It's like this chosen family, even if it's a holiday card that I get once a year, it means that they're thinking of me. And there has just been so much support that how could they not be my friends at this point, And I get like such a kick seeing the Facebook posts that they make about each other on like an anniversary dinner date, or if they're like scuba diving, in Bali, and I'm like, oh my God, they're like living the dream. Like I'm rooting for them and they're rooting for me. And it's like this just perfect little circle that we have. But yeah, I think I was born in the wrong generation.
You were supposed to be here to be the observer and to
I like that.
I was a history major in college, so
Mhm.
history is really important. So
Yeah,
speaking of history, can you talk a little bit about some of the things these lesbian women had to do to survive?
totally. Also,
Really hard things.
yes, many hard things.
Mhm.
What comes to mind, I mean, 50 interviews, it's hard to keep track of all the details. I would say it was pretty heartbreaking to hear a story of a couple in Denver that told me that they were on a known homosexuals list back in the 80s, also received death threats from a contractor that was working on their home, just talking about being violated in your own home, and fearing for your life. Just discrimination for job opportunities. Thinking about Lillian Faderman's story, where she was so qualified to work as a professor at UCLA or Berkeley, but then was sent to Fresno and still had an incredible career. And that's where she met her current partner of 43 years. But I don't know, like, just hearing stories of microaggressions that were pretty macro, I would say.
Can you share me some of the microaggressions that were pretty macro?
Well, this is definitely not a microaggression. This is like really, really scary. But a couple that I also met in Fresno, they said the KKK showed up to a pride parade in, let's say, the late 90s. So that's not micro by any means. One of the couples telling me in a past relationship that she was out with her ex, and when they went out to a bar, she would wear a mask. Her ex would wear a literal mask because she was so afraid being seen, and they were like at a gay bar. So I think hearing these stories, it just makes me really grateful for the freedom that we have now. But there are so many stories, and I really need to start compiling these interviews and putting them out to the world, because I really want people to be educated on everything that they've overcome.
To craft your book, are you like you're obviously including their stories in each with the pictures, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And I think the written portion is just as important as the visuals, because there's only so much that I can represent in a present day portrait. But when I started the project, I was thinking, this is not something that you see in the media landscape
no,
ever.
no.
And then I was thinking, wait, in terms of like archival history, I don't think that this exists also. Just the topic of older lesbians being photographed, it's few and far.
I've seen the same 10 pictures over and
Yeah, like, it might be like Jeb's work, who I love Jeb's work. And, Jeb is paving the way for so many lesbian photographers now. And it's funny to think that, I photographed a couple of couples that are friends with Jeb. So she's very connected to some of the women that I'm re-photographing. Oh, Joan Byron. She was basically the first lesbian photographer to actually make a book about lesbian photography. And yeah, and it's incredible work. So whoever's watching, I hope you can look up Jeb's work. But yeah, it might be the same 10 pictures. And as I've really tried to educate myself over the years, I think that the lesbian community has done such an incredible job with oral history. There are so many different oral history archives. As a photographer and as a visual storyteller, I'm thinking to myself, I want to see these women's faces. I want to see them interact with each other. I want to see them in their own homes. I want that intimacy that's lacking historically, on a visual perspective and currently. So to be able to walk through somebody's door as a complete stranger and to share that kind of intimacy with them is such a privilege and such a blessing. I think it's like saved my life in so many ways. Just being able to see that and to see it over and over again, it's like I can finally believe in my own future because I'm seeing it.
now all of a sudden you're saying, "Oh, wait a minute, this is possible. I can meet somebody and spend my life with them." It is.
And it doesn't always have to be depressing and sad and hard. And
It's the narrative out there because it's often the straight narrative, but it's also the reason why it's depressing and hard is because the straight world makes it depressing and hard.
certainly.
Do you think if we were just treated like as straight couples are when they're married or start families or anything like that, or even date, it would be a much different world? Even if people think they're being supportive, sometimes they're actually not being supportive. Like, I was just talking to somebody about this right before this call about, when you come out to somebody and all they talk about is your sex life. And it's like being gay is so much more than who I sleep with. And I'm sure these women prove it time and time and time again. Yeah.
These women are so accomplished. It blows my mind. And I've put some of them on the spot about it. I'm like, you have your PhD. Is there any chance not to therapize anyone? But I've noticed a reoccurring trend of a lot of the women that I interview are very accomplished academically and are scholars. I'm like, did you maybe overcompensate in some ways, really trying to excel in your career because you maybe didn't have the space to fully be yourself? And some of them say, yeah, probably, doesn't really matter at this point, but yeah.
Well, yeah, because and also too, they had the time. Because if you are a woman who's an academic, but you end up marrying a man and having children, sometimes your career takes the back seat. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. And so I find that women that are later in life lesbians tend to be very, very accomplished because the women that I work with tend to be, so the women I attract tend to be very highly educated. They have a bachelor's to a PhD. My thinking around that is that they were searching for something. I went back and got my MDiv when I was in my 40s. I was searching for something. And so a lot of times we just keep getting more and more education, but trying to find it. And because we don't want to think about that we might be queer. So, and it's all subconscious. It's not like, oh, I don't want to think about being queer, so I'm going to go back to school.
Right.
No. It's just
Kind of
like, I think
simmering.
we try to avoid it, and so we keep getting more and more education. So it makes a lot of sense that, yeah, there's probably women in your community kept getting more and more education because they're trying to achieve or prove something. But I'm
Mhm.
sure there's other women that just wanted to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
they
definitely.
could. My life would have been very different if I had came out young because I would have really focused on career.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might have ended up having children because I really wanted them. That's one of the reasons why I got married because I thought children were going to fix me. They didn't, but I thought they were.
I think that was very insightful. Just, yeah, talking about these women that are so career driven that, I recognize that they contain multitudes like all of
Mhm.
us. And yeah, it's very offensive for straight people to sexualize. That's not what the project is about. It's like, yes, there are moments where couples are very open with me that they're still very much attracted to each other. And that's an important detail. So that's very important for them to share if they're comfortable. I think it's really great for people to know that about older lesbians that there's still a spark, and that a lot of straight couples lose it.
In lesbian world, there's lesbian bed death, and people do lose their spark with each other. But my argument is, see, we pathologize. It's like straight people have bed death all the time, and we don't call it straight bed death, do we? I mean, there's plenty of straight people that don't sleep with their spouse. There's so many. And yes, there are lesbians that don't sleep with their spouse, but there are still lesbians that are very, very attracted to their spouse. It's like also too the way they talk about lesbians in the sense that what do they call it? They like our connections with each other. They pathologize it that like there's something wrong with us because we form very intense friendships as well as being lovers.
It is a life of intensity for sure, and just emotional depth, that I feel like I also have with my straight friends and my queer friends. And yeah, and I think that whatever connection I have to these women, I feel like spans past lives. So just the way that I meet them and like cross paths with them, I'm like, there has got to be some sort of higher power, at play. So I'm like, God is supporting this.
The stories need to be told because queer erasure happens all the time. You read about Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt was in a queer relationship for a very long time in her marriage. And like you try to talk about it to people, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. Like there's something wrong. I'm like, she was a lesbian. You need to acknowledge that. That's why her lens was the way they just refused to. And it's like sometimes you have no energy. You're like, okay, I'm just not going to waste my time.
Yeah, and you're like, this isn't really my responsibility. But that's, I think, what you learn about talking to older lesbians or just older queer people as a whole is that there's so much that's not in the history books. And that goes for, narratives outside of queer history as well. And, I'm clearly very drawn to older generations, but I had just finished a 2-year project documenting the last generation of Japanese American incarceration camp survivors. And one of the survivors that I spent 4 hours with is George Takei. And he has his own story that he only recently released. He started talking about his coming out story. This project that I worked on about these survivors would not exist without my older lesbian partnership project because it's these intersectional narratives of just erased history and narratives that are just so underrepresented, at least in the public.
So where can people see your work?
That's a great question. A few different places. I am on Instagram and my handle is the chromatic sheep because I thought let's reclaim the black sheep. That's no fun. And my website is morganlieberman.com. And yeah, I work for various publications, but like I said before, Hidden Once, Hidden Twice is a work in progress, and I'm going to keep building it out and evolving this project. And I'm currently raising money on GoFundMe through rolling donations. So if anybody's interested in supporting the next leg of the
we'll
trip,
definitely put the link in our show notes if you would like to support Morgan's work. Now, are you still taking people to be a part of it, or are you
very much?
Are you full up of lesbians?
Oh my God, never. I mean, the limit does not exist. I have a spreadsheet of couples from around the country that have reached out, and I hope to eventually get to them. But right now, I think the next trip is to be Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And then I'm finished with the entire Western region. And then I can start to move east. But I really would like to go to all 50 states, partially because of the famous slogan, "We are everywhere." So what does that look like? Going to all 50 states. So that's my motivation.
Yeah, that's true. We are everywhere. And I think it's really cute to show people in different states and different ways of living and stuff because lesbians live all different ways. I mean, yes, there are highly educated academic lesbians and they're also not.
Very important. No, but it's very important.
And I'm just going to say, probably the highly educated academic ones are more likely to reach out to you than other lesbians that are just living their lives, and may not.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So they can reach out to you on the GoFundMe. They can go to your website. They can follow you on Instagram at the Chromatic Sheep. So did you have a coming out song, Morgan?
No.
You said you didn't.
That's so embarrassing. I think I need to just make something up, but I would say that I'm a really massive fan of Fleetwood Mac.
Okay.
And Gypsy is tattooed on my arm. And this is maybe my coming out lyric is it says, "I have no fear, I have only love." So Stevie is my favorite. And there is a Buckingham Nicks release party today at Amoeba Music. If anybody knows Amoeba, it's a very big record store here in LA. And I'm going to probably camp out to get that vinyl. So I am clearly a huge fan.
Book or a movie that really changed your perspective on things?
A book or a movie? Did I send over my notes on that?
I don't know.
Well, I think I said Orange is the New Black was.
Oh, that's right. You did.
Yeah.
And you already talked about that. So now we understand what very formative for you to get yourself thinking about your own sexuality.
Yeah, definitely. That was a big one. I think that was a big one for a lot of people.
A lot of people. I watched it when I came out. It was still going on then, and I liked it. It was very entertaining.
Yeah.
Good old drama.
Yeah, it definitely was the gateway to the L Word, which is a classic.
Well, did you watch the L Word when you were young, or did you do it like afterwards? A lot of people watch it It's so silly, isn't it?
It's very silly, but we need silliness.
Yes, we do. And how would you describe your life today?
I would say fulfilled. I think that's a really good thing to say out loud. I feel very fulfilled in the present moment and the direction I'm going. And that's partially because of this project. I'd say it's really opened up a lot of doors for me, and it's created a lot of pride, I think, in myself, and a lot of self-love that wasn't there yet.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. Please help Morgan out if you want to help her GoFundMe. We will also put her email address in, or whatever address people use to contact you. So if you want to be a part of her project, are you looking for people from any particular area right now? I know you're done with the West Coast.
Almost done with the West. If people have referrals to friends or family in Oregon and Washington and Idaho, those are like the next 3 states I'd like to go to. But please reach out if you know 63 and up. I'm very specific about the 63, but yeah, yes.
Why the 63?
I don't even know. I feel like I looked it up once, and there was a website that said that was like the senior citizen like age start, and that's like
To me, it's like 7.
No, both of my parents are. My mom's going to be 60 in January, and like she looks like she's 45. So,
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Morgan.
thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.